Hi, this is Naroki5. I am going to be doing this until I die or I find something better to do. So please help me achieve this personal and, I think, noble objective by contributing to my Patreon or Subscribestar. Link is down below. Every little bit helps. Thank you very much.
There's the bell for the opening round, and Rocky Balboa comes out to the center of the ring. Got the Russian right back into Balboa's corner now. Come on! Get out of here! Come on, spin him out! Let's go, Rocky! Get out of here! Balboa gets out of the corner now, and now once more it is Drago backing Rocky Balboa up with a jab. And Balboa is not staying on balance because of the long jab of the Russian. Brace yourself! Brace yourself! Come on! Get up! Hands up! Touch him! Now! He can't seem to touch Russian. Rocky pounding away at the midsection of the Russian, and he's just hit him with everything he's got.
And Drago just smiled at him.
Keep jumping away! Chop him down! Chop him down! Come on, Rock! Rocky Balboa is in serious trouble. They might have to stop this one before somebody gets killed. Richards grabbing! Richards grabbing! Rocky's hurt. He woke the sleeping giant, and now he's paying the price. A right hand from Drago sends Rocky Balboa 15 feet across the ring.
And the champ is down.
Drago continuing to punish Rocky Balboa. He just will not let him out of that corner, and Rocky Balboa is just trying to get through this first round. The Russian just threw Rocky Balboa into his own corner like a rag doll. Well, a tough first 3 minutes for Rocky Balboa. He's not only fighting what appears to be an invincible opponent, he's also fighting a very hostile crowd. There's the bell for round two. It's been a one-sided fight so far.
It'll take more than luck for Rocky to survive this round. Rocky's been hit with bombs.
Slipping hook, Rock! Slipping hook! Rocky Balboa trying to stay in the middle of the ring against the big Russian. Move there! Do what you gotta do! Stay with him! Go for it! Go for it! All intent Rocky Balboa should be all finished tonight, but he's fighting back ferociously. And Balboa goes down again from a right hand, bounces right back up. Get killed out there. Rocky Balboa has taken Ivan Drago's best punches so far. He's cut, he's bleeding, but he's on his feet, he's on the run. He's cut! He's cut! Russian's cut, and it's a bad cut. And now it's Rocky Balboa coming after Ivan Drago. He grabs Rocky Balboa by the throat. Balboa picking up the Russian and throws him to the ground like a wrestler. It's a gutter war. No holds barred in Moscow. Rocky may be on the receiving end so far, but he's here to fight. This is shaping up to be a personal war, and right now, it's anybody's boxing match.
I am doing this particular, and I wanted to do this tonight because I didn't. It's an important day, yeah, in the history of the Manosphere, and it was an event that happened. Well, it's St. Patrick's Day of 2023, and it was 10 years ago in a few hours today that an event at PyCon back in 2013 occurred, otherwise known as Donglegate. Now, for those of you who don't remember what Donglegate was. There was and this keep in mind, this is going to be my interpretation. There was this angry, self-righteous, embittered feminist named Adria Richards, and she was listening to two guys talk about dongles. Now, dongles have a particular appearance. They're phallic, right? And they were talking about forking, and they're talking about dongles. And I mean, the joke was in no way directed at Adria Richards. Adria Richards chose to take a photograph of these people, these two guys, send it off to PyCon, and these guys got removed, and then one of these guys later on ended up getting fired over it. This resulted in the company that Adria Richards was working for, Sendgrid, basically getting absolutely raked over the coals for allowing Adria Richards to get away with this, including a DDoS attack, etc., etc., etc. Ultimately, what ended up happening was that Adria Richards got fired over that particular event, and I mean justifiably so. Now, that might not seem like that big of a deal, because when you're starting to look around right now, especially if you've been heavily involved in the Manosphere, you're starting, like, for instance, the situation with Andrew Tate. You know, the mainstream media has tried desperately to try to seize control of the narrative on this, on the situation with him, and it's not working, right? But what had happened, with very, very rare exception, in the Duke Lacrosse incident, which was phase 2 of the greater men's movement, and of the Manosphere. Up until that point, though, I mean, Crystal Magnum was not actually ever held legally responsible for what occurred during Duke Lacrosse. The prosecutor that basically tried to use those 3 lacrosse players as political tools to further himself, there were consequences for him, but Crystal Jane Magnum had never actually paid, and it suffered any consequences for the things that she said about those 3 boys. Sorry, three men, those 3 lacrosse players. Now, what occurred around Sendgrid, with Sendgrid and Adria Richards is, I mean, this is just speculation on my part, but my gut feeling was that Adria Richards was not a particularly well-liked individual at Sendgrid in the first place. And when this happened, that just gave the company, and because I suspect that if you ever go to HR at Sendgrid and you actually are somehow ever able to get a hold of Adria Richards' file, I suspect you will see a fairly large number of complaints leveled against her. The whole thing, though, is that what happened specifically is that for the first time, at least where it was well known, a woman was held criminally liable and responsible for the actions that she took against a guy, aka she wasn't allowed to get away with it. Now, this is something that, you're starting to see more of, like you're actually starting to see women having to face the consequences for their actions. It's not happening nearly enough, in my opinion, or probably in the opinion of most men in the manosphere, but it is happening at a much, and trust me, compared to what you saw 10 years ago, you are seeing a much greater rate of women being held responsible for their actions now as opposed to 10 years ago. And you can thank the manosphere for that. You can't thank, because I'm going to imagine at some point there's going to be an attempt by feminists to go, oh, well, we wised up and we realized that we couldn't be allowing these women to get away with it. Don't ever believe that hype. Okay? This wasn't any doing of feminists. This is just the manosphere slowly but surely repeating these points over and over. And I mean, it's an easy thing to do as a member of the manosphere. I mean, the propaganda of the manosphere to a great extent is to just stand and point. And it has been more or less stand and point for the entire time I've been involved in the manosphere. Now, a lot of people, I still see a lot of people getting frustrated and getting angry and getting embittered. And I'm almost certain there's going to be a couple of people that are going to go off into some long-winded explanation as to why they think that nothing has changed and nothing will change, and that we're doomed to lose, etc., and we shouldn't even be bothering to try. Well, that is that person's opinion. However, me having seen the luxury of the manosphere grow over those last 10 years, I can tell you that there were some very significant things that occurred over that period of time. To give you, and I think probably the thing, and this is going to piss off a few people in the red pill dating coach community, and honestly, I'm through really giving a damn what some of these people think. But when I first became aware of MGTOW as a concept, there were probably fewer than 5,000 MGTOW on the entire planet back in 2013. As it currently stands, and it was, make no mistake about it, it was uniquely a North American and probably the Five Eyes: Canada, the U.S., Great Britain, Australia, and New Zealand. The overwhelming number of men in MGTOW were in those 5 countries. From that point in time, it has gone from a membership of probably fewer than 5,000 people to probably over 1 million men worldwide. And it's gone from just something that was just a fringe group in North America to something where it's where the Prime Minister of Canada was forced to address the MGTOW hashtag and refused, by the way, to actually admit he was afraid to use that particular hashtag in the House of Commons. That's how far MGTOW has gone. It has reached the highest levels of government in a corporate culture. Same thing goes with dating coaches and red pill, right? Oh, it was around as PUA, and it kind of morphed into kind of like the red pill dating coach thing. And yeah, there was a lot of, well, I mean, there's grifters in MGTOW too, but I mean, there are grifters in, there are a lot of grifters in the dating coach community, but you know, that particular group also has, I mean, the red pill, although it's been quarantined on Reddit, the estimates of the number of guys that are in the red pill MGTOW dating coach community probably is maybe slightly smaller than the than the MGTOW community is. And there is a significant amount of overlap between the two. Now, the men's rights movement also has significantly improved in size. It hasn't had the same spectacular growth spike that, say, the red pill had, or in particular, I'll give you an idea. If MGTOW were a stock, you know, if you invested, say, $1,000 in, say, in MGTOW back in 2013, your stock value would now be $200,000. It's had that kind of growth. But I mean, the red pill, the men's rights movement had fewer than 100,000 people in it. It's probably it's around maybe 350, 400,000. It's not a small community either, and it's been growing at a fairly brisk clip, especially in the last couple of years. The whole manosphere in general has gone from being a laughingstock to the point now where you have individuals trying to, like, I mean, for instance, Mooncat, actually, like, you have people trying to pass bills at the national level, for instance, the anti-misogyny bill that they're attempting to pass in Britain right now, or the moves that they've been making against Jordan Peterson, who technically speaking isn't a member of the Manosphere, and Andrew Tate, and the way they especially in regards to the MGTOW faction of the Manosphere, about how desperately they try so hard to MGTOW is almost like Voldemort, right? Like, it's the word you dare not say. And I mean, I will get into each of the individual groups and stuff, but I mean, the men's rights movement has also expanded. So the Manosphere has gone, the whole Manosphere has gone from being a rump organization with maybe like somewhere between 150 to 200,000 in total, maybe not even that many, back in 2013. And by the way, MGTOW was incredibly small back then. And it has gone from that to something in particular with MGTOW. It's gone, like, MGTOW has gone worldwide. It has gone worldwide. The whole, the red pill, maybe not so much. Men's rights, maybe not so much. But MGTOW has gone international. I mean, in specifically though, in North America, MGTOW has gone. I mean, the Manosphere is at the point now where, you know, I run into people on the street and I start talking to them now. And this started a few years ago, but it's becoming more and more frequent as I go along. I run into people, I start talking to people now, and they know about Andrew Tate, and they know about MGTOW, and they know about the concepts that the Manosphere is the concepts that the Manosphere is pushing. That the gender dynamic is completely flawed and screwed, and that, you know, any involvement with a woman hands that woman a gun, right? Now, each individual male will find his way of dealing with the situation. But the bottom line is that, I mean, the information, it's reached the point now where if you're willing to step outside of your individual private tribe, and if you're willing to start asking around, there's probably somebody either within your group of friends or one step removed that knows about the Manosphere and is involved in the Manosphere, at least in North America and Britain and Australia and New Zealand. Right? Like the information that the Manosphere has been talking about, that I think most men need to relearn, is it's not just an online thing anymore. So you might be asking, so what does this all have to do with Donglegate? Well, again, going back to what happened back in 2013, I saw all three factions of the Manosphere. I saw their growth rates spike after what happened with Adria Richards. Because and I've talked about this. I did something back in 2018 when I'm back on the Red Pill Nation, where I talked about the Manosphere. And what happened is that for the first time ever, feminism they found out that feminism could bleed. They found out that feminists could indeed be held accountable for their actions. And they are starting to get a hold. They are starting to be held. Women are beginning to be held more responsible for their actions. Like, accusations are not as ironclad as they used to be. You know, feminist dogma is beginning to lose its, and female approval is beginning to lose appeal. Consider what is going on right now, for instance, and this would just only happen a few weeks ago. The whole situation with Leonardo DiCaprio dating that 19-year-old. There were women, most of them post-wall, by the way, going to the tops of the parapets and screaming as loudly as they can about what happened, about Leonardo DiCaprio dating this 19-year-old. And here's the thing, right? The whole issue, was being called out, and the whole issue was being challenged. And the hypocrisy was being pointed out. Why? Because these women don't have the whole room to themselves anymore. They're losing. They have been, and I know this, and there's going to be a couple people that are going to that are going to be like wet blankets, and they're going to try and throw a wet blanket over what I'm saying. I've been around for a decade now. Let me tell you, like, the Manosphere has got way more influence than it did 10 years ago. And yeah, you can see that impact as you go out. Like Elon Musk tweeted, "Take the red pill," a few years ago, and everybody spurged out. And Donald Trump's daughter, Ivanka Trump, replied to it. So the red pill is such a dangerous concept that when the Wachowskis made that new Matrix movie, they literally tried to use that movie as a vehicle in an attempt to retcon the red pill. They have attempted on at least a couple of occasions in the 2010s to retcon the red pill without success. Without success. So, you know, there was another incident that occurred at Goldsmith College with a woman that I can't remember right now. That where she was more or less forced to quit. She didn't get fired, but I mean, had this situation with Adria Richards not happened, and yeah, you can speculate, Adria Richards was probably a rather toxic human being, and her being fired was it. If you ever go into Sendgrid's old HR files, you'll probably find a large series of complaints about Adria Richards. It changes nothing. Donglegate was the event that kick-started the Manosphere and moved it to another level. And, I think we can all, and as toxic an individual as Adria Richards is, I think we can all be grateful that it happened. From the tales of tragedy comes triumph. And yeah, let's not kid ourselves. What happened with Donglegate was a triumph by any stretch of the imagination. Ultimately, though, what I think happened here is, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they attack you, then you win. We're at the attack point. I don't think we would have reached the same level that we're currently at had Donglegate not happened. And I'm going to say this again, because there's going to be this guy that's just going to be whiny and bitchy and complaining and say that nothing's happened and that nothing's changed. Okay, I've been around 10 years. Let me tell you, stuff has changed. Stuff has changed. Most of it for the better. Now, the other issue here is that in celebrating the fact that this happened 10 years ago and how this is probably what's going to happen with stage 4, which I suspect is going to happen sooner rather than later, is that it was one person. So how is it a triumph? Where is the Manosphere gone in the last 10 years? The biggest name in the Manosphere, I believe, back in 2013 was a guy by the name of Paul Elam. And the largest website for the Manosphere was Return of Kings. And I mean, you could make a very solid argument that maybe Roosh V was actually, I think probably the biggest name in the Manosphere back then was Roosh V. And I was never a big fan of Roosh V, but I digress. Baruch V was not, he seemed to be permanently stuck at around the 20,000. He was rated about 20,000 in the Alexa ratings for websites, and he just simply could not move up from that. Now, I've seen A Voice for Men go into the top 100,000 and then plummet. I have seen MGTOW.com enter the top 100,000 only to have Keymaster leave in 2019, and MGTOW.com no longer exists as a website. And there is actually no actual totally dedicated site online right now that is like, I mean, there's a couple of chat boards, but there's not an actual full-blown MGTOW website currently. And if there was one, I suspect it would be doing quite well. It's gone from, but I mean, it was very difficult. And again, right, certain organizations have made significant efforts to, and still are, by the way, attempting to disallow access to, say, for instance, a Voice for Men or whatever. It hasn't stopped the growth at all. Finding a Voice for Men is kind of difficult at this point. The issue, the big issue with this is that, I mean, it's gone from being just a small fringe thing where there's one big name, Rouge V, and it's gone from that to Andrew Tate and Kevin Samuels, for instance, and Fresh and Fit. The largest content producer in the Manosphere right now, or the one with the most subscribers, is Kevin Samuels, who's now no longer with us. But I mean, he has more followers as a corpse than the largest bread tuber. That would have been unthinkable even 2 years ago. Andrew Tate being one of the most searched names on Google would have been unthinkable even 3 years ago. Rollo Tomasi's books and his writings, I wasn't running into people who were familiar with his writings up until about 2 or 3 years ago. All of these individuals, whether they can put their egos aside, or, well, I mean, even guys like Terrence Popp and Hammerhand and Undead Chronic, and even Sandman, whom, by the way, guess when he got his start? 2013. October of 2013 was when he put out his first video. That would be Sandman. And it was about the Achille Lauro. And you want to know what that particular video was about? Was the fact that the Achille Lauro and the accident that occurred with a ship turned over, the captain of the ship was allegedly with a woman up on the control deck when it happened. The captain got held criminally responsible, but nothing ever happened to the woman. If you don't believe me, if Sandman still has that video up, feel free to go and look for yourself. That was October of 2013. Stardust, Thinking Ape, his first stuff was 2013. Spetsnaz, his first, a lot of the long term, I believe even Paul Proteus and some of the other people that are no longer, some of the people that are not with us anymore, a lot of these content producers got their start around within 6 months to a year after Donglegate happened. Andrew Tate and Rollo Tomasi and Fresh and Fit and Hammerhand and Undead Chronic and Sandman and myself and any other content producer out there that has a significant following or had a significant following. And I don't have a significant following, but I mean, you get my drift. Like, every single one of those guys, more or less, whether they want to admit it or not, every single one of those people more or less owes some of their growth and some of how and where they got to where they started. because Adria Richards simply could not mind her own goddamn business. Just stop and think about that. And it's even more significant than that, though. And I mean, I don't want to, because this isn't this. I mean, anti-feminism is part of my nature, but consider what's happened to most of the mainline feminist publications, specifically Jezebel. Once upon a time, back in 2013, Jezebel.com was I believe in the top 200 websites visited worldwide. I don't even know if it's in the top. I'm not even sure if it's in the top 10,000 anymore. We Hunted the Mammoth has like literally fallen off the map. Everyday Feminism, all of those feminist sites, all those feminist websites, they've all seen a significant, marked decrease in the amount of traffic that they're getting. Now, I'm not saying that as a celebration, but, you know, when your strategy, and I guess Manosphere propaganda, but I mean, the Manosphere propaganda has been pretty easy for the last 10 years. All we've really had to do is just stand and point. That's all we've had to do. You know, they keep rolling out these same tired talking points, you know, and consider some of the things that are now under question. You know, if Mama Bear ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? Well, now the narrative, thanks to the Manosphere, is that it's sort of like, sorry, what? Excuse me? It's because you've had a bad day does not give you the right to go and project that onto everybody else. If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. Well, you know what? If your worst is borderline narcissistic, self-absorbed, abusive, I am not interested in your best, and I don't have to put up with your worst. If that's what your worst is, I'm not interested in your best. You know, the concept of men not being they're really pushing on this one really hard. The concept of men not being allowed to express their emotions. That's another one that's another myth that's biting the dust. Because when you start to peel away the layers on that one, you start noticing something. Like the places where it would be really strongly advised for men to keep their emotions contained, you know, mental institutions, prisons, around toxic people, in the workplace, around situations where drugs and alcohol are being served or consumed, places like that. Women would also be rather advised to keep a lid on their emotions in those particular situations. And it doesn't acknowledge the fact that men and women handle and deal with their emotions differently. The whole concept of midlife crisis, you know, like the man gets to the point where he has the financial resources or the maturity to actually date younger women, and if he starts to do it, he's having a midlife crisis. That's just a shaming attempt by post-wall women to have increased access to men. That's why I was talking earlier about that situation with Leonardo DiCaprio dating that 19-year-old. Like, the people that are screaming about that are all, for as far as I can say, we're all post-wall women. And, you know, these same women were curiously silent when Jada Pinkett Smith was banging her son's best friend, or when Madonna, who's now 63, was dating a 23-year-old. They were kind of quiet about that. This is stuff that the Manosphere has generated. You know, like, don't go back to the don't go back to the woman that you have. Like, yeah, the concept that perhaps, that you might want to reconsider marriage. The marriage rates have been dropping. Jewelry stores. I'm seeing jewelry stores slowly but surely disappearing from the malls. The reason why? Because people aren't getting any married anymore. What's one of the reasons why men aren't getting married anymore? Is because the information about the manosphere is out there. That marriage effectively leaves you completely and utterly at the mercy of the woman. Or you don't need to be married in order to have some sort of civil union. But I mean, word is getting out. Men are finding out. The information that the manosphere is spreading is gone. It's gone beyond. It's gone beyond the control of the mainstream media to control it. Like the mainstream media, for instance, and I mentioned this earlier, about how Justin Trudeau would not say the name MGTOW, or Tim Pool won't mention the word MGTOW, or Jeremy Hambling won't say the word MGTOW, simply because even saying that word, somehow gives it power. I have no problem saying the word MGTOW. I'm going to say MGTOW until the day I die. That's what's happened. The concepts that the red pill has brought forward. Not just to dating, but to reality, right? Like, people at the very highest levels of corporate society are aware of the concept of the red pill. The people who were recently at the event in Davos, they can't leave their safe zones anymore without being confronted about what they're doing. Like, they can't leave the hotel and just go into they couldn't go into Davos without being confronted. Right? Like when feminists engage in propaganda now, there's a group of men there ready to challenge them. And they've become so desperate now that in Britain,